Well, hello, Facebook friends and family. Okay, now we're getting into the double digits, so it's hard to use my hands, but today is day 11 of 21, and the topic for today is anxiety. That's a huge, huge one for most people. So first, I would like to apologize for having to cancel yesterday. I'm a little bit under the weather, and it just wasn't something that I could easily do yesterday and hold that space really well for you all and kind of share with you a few insights on anxiety. So I decided to cancel it and just kind of push everything out a day. So instead of ending on August 28th now, we're going to end on August 29th. One day. So thank you for joining in. Daisy, May, Robin, Tammy, welcome, welcome. So again, thank you for your understanding with yesterday. Okay, we're going to dive right in. As I've said for the last 10 days, I could go on for days and days about a lot of these topics. After all, I am a therapist, and I have been doing this for 22 plus years and seen lots of people. And so obviously I've seen these issues multiple times in multiple ways with so many people. And the reason for doing these lives was to be able to maybe offer up a little bit of an insight into some of these topics and a few little solutions that might help you to begin to feel like you're managing through a little bit. Because we all know that this adulting roller coaster that we're on as adults can be very emotional and very challenging and very difficult at times. So, thank you again. So, anxiety. I know that this is actually, there's a statistic out there, lots of statistics, but did you know that 40 million people suffer with anxiety and that it is the #1 mental health issue? That's pretty scary and that's pretty intense. That there are 40 million people that have anxiety issues to the degree where we would call it a mental health disorder, meaning a diagnosable issue that we put a label to, whether it's generalized anxiety disorder or a panic disorder. That's scary to me. Because what it's telling me is that there are so many people out there who are dealing with these feelings that create this kind of intensity to their emotions that creates this anxiety, and they struggle to kind of manage through their day-to-day life because of these feelings. I actually had people who had such anxiety they could not even drive to my office on a regular basis. They had to have somebody else drive them. And that's very inhibiting to our lives, right? So let's kind of take a look at what anxiety really is. As I've said for over the last 10 days, a lot of these emotions are kind of a various mishmash sometimes of other little pieces of emotion and our experience that kind of create this label, right? Like I'm overwhelmed, or I feel confused, or I feel angry. Well, anxiety is kind of unique upon itself because it's kind of a blend of two things that are happening. All right, so we're going to spend a whole episode on depression, but it's important to understand the differences between depression and anxiety, and not just the physical stuff that you might feel that can be very, very different for people, but also kind of what's happening and where it's coming from. So to touch on depression just for a second, depression is about living in the past. Okay, something happened to me, I experienced something, and now I feel a chronic kind of thought process, a sadness, like a sense of feelings that I'm kind of living in that past place. I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm upset about this thing that happened in the past. But anxiety is about living in the future. So it kind of stems from the past. Like I experienced this thing in the past. I felt nervous. I felt scared. I felt afraid. And that's maybe what I actually experienced in the past. But now I'm projecting it into the future. What happens if? What will be the case if this thing happens again, or if I experience this experience again? If I go out to my car late at night and I see somebody else near my car. I'm scared. So now I have anxiety to even maybe go to my car because I'm afraid that someone will be there or near there again, and it will scare me. And because we're hardwired to move toward pleasure and away from pain, like we talked about with anger the other day, then we start to develop these very nervous feelings, these anxiety feelings around these future situations. Okay, so what happens when it's not necessarily about a future situation? It's something that's happening for me right now. I'm just taking a shower, and all of a sudden I feel this overwhelming sense of anxiety, maybe even panic, okay? And I notice that my breathing is more shallow and my heart is beating really fast and I'm feeling very shaky. I'm just taking a shower. Nothing is happening around me. There's no reason I should be afraid of anything. And I'm obviously not projecting into some future place or experience. So what happens when we feel that anxiety in the now? Well, there's a subconscious kind of thought process and belief system that's happening. They say we have the average 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000. That's mind-blowing to me. Of which we don't even remember 10%. Now, my husband teases me and calls me the great memorini because I have a crazy memory. I would challenge anybody to tell me the 600 thoughts they have in any given day. I can't even tell you that. And I'm supposed to have this phenomenal memory. So we have all these thoughts and they're running through our mind. And we're not maybe even consciously aware that they're there, but they're there. And so what's happening is if there's experiences from the past that we have had that were scary or frustrating or sad, or again, you can put any label you want to these experiences. If they were not positive in any way, shape, or form, even if it was just a teacher kind of chastising you because you didn't do your best on an assignment, that can be a traumatic experience for a young person or a child. So that gets stored away in our brain and our mind, and something I'm doing now, or just one of those 600 thoughts that maybe, we're sort of aware of or not aware of, or one of the 60,000 thoughts that's kind of running chronically in the back of our mind are flittering through, our body is going to react in the same way it always had before. And so all of a sudden we can feel this tremendous sense of anxiety, these nervous feelings, and not be clear as to where it's coming from. I hope that makes sense. Because again, we're just kind of dipping a toe into a very big topic that has been researched and is continuing to be researched, because we don't want to see people living in this state of heightened anxiety all the time. It's very unhealthy for your physical body. For any of you who experience anxiety, you know what that feels like. You know the kinds of feelings that your physical body is dealing with on a regular basis. Again, from a quickened state of breathing, a more shallow state of breathing, a very nervous reaction in the body. You're in a constant, what we call hypervigilant state of kind of fight or flight. So there are excess chemicals like cortisol and norepinephrine and adrenaline that are flooding your body. And so you're feeling that shortness of breath, you're feeling that jitteriness, you're feeling that difficulty in breathing and the heart beating really fast, among many other physical symptoms you might feel. And then your mind is interpreting that as anxiety, but you might not have a clue what the thoughts are or where they're coming from or why you're even feeling that. So to understand your anxiety and how they can help, Daisy, that is a really tough one. It is hell. And no one, I would hope, would wish it on anybody. How do you get other people to understand that? It's all you can do is share your experience and let them know that I have a tremendous amount of anxiety, or I'm feeling anxiety in this moment. And you may not understand it, but I am asking you to just kind of step back for a second and maybe not judge what I'm feeling or what I'm experiencing, because maybe this is not something you get or understand or have ever felt. It is something I'm feeling, and here's what I need from you. And this is where we need to be able to vocalize the things that we need or important to us. So if you need some space, if somebody's kind of talking at you, if you need them to just sit silent with you and hold your hand while you're feeling all the physical stuff and the emotional stuff and the mental stuff, that's the best that I can offer to you, because some people will work to understand what's going on with someone they care about, and some people won't. And some people will have absolute judgments about it. So, hello, Yasmin. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for popping in. Okay, so anxiety is this projection from these past experiences that we may or may not be consciously aware of into the future. But what anxiety really is it's fear-based, okay? I invite you just for a moment to think about one thing that you are worried about, but you have no fear of. Okay, you've thought long enough, because you can't do it. You can't think about something that you have worry about if you have no fear of it. If I knew unequivocally that I was going to live till a certain age and die a natural death, then no matter what happened to me in my life, even if there was a horrible car accident and I was horribly injured and they told me I could die, if I knew unequivocally, for sure, guaranteed, which we can't know that, but let's say I did, that I was going to die a natural death at some particular age, then all the stuff that happens in the meantime would not worry me, because I wouldn't be frightened about it. And so, hi, Ken, welcome. Oh, pill shaming is another thing people do with anxiety. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of shame that goes on, Daisy May, with a lot of people about being heavy, about taking pills, about seeing doctors, about having certain kinds of jobs. There is so much judgment in the world. And how do we combat that judgment with others when we are struggling to kind of feel what we feel and feel a sense of mastery in our own lives, or a sense of strength, or a sense of ability to kind of move through our life the way we choose? There will always be that judgment, because judgment is based in fear also. I'm going to judge you because I don't understand what you're going through. I have opinions and thoughts about how I think you should be. Remember that lovely should word. And now I'm judging you for that. So anxiety is fear-based, right? Now, you might not see this very well on the camera, but here is a little sheet that, if you guys want it, please make sure that you get me your email address and I'll send this off to you. But if you notice right here, you have fear. Camera, go opposite way. Fear. All right, so I said, what are you worried about that you have no fear of? It starts in fear. When we have an excessive amount of fear, eventually then it rises to worry. So then we start to worry. What happens if? What's going to happen when? It's all future-based. I'm worried, what if he or she isn't okay? Oh, my gosh, the weather is horrible. I hope that they make it home fine. It's fear that they'll get in an accident that becomes excessive, rises to a level of worry. And then if we have excessive worry, then what happens is it rises to a level of anxiety. So now I have this extreme worry. I'm worried. And eventually it becomes too big and it rises to anxiety, what we call anxiety, because now we're adding physical symptoms that oftentimes this is what happens. We're adding physical symptoms to it that take it from our labeling of worry to the label of anxiety, where I feel the jitteriness, I feel the heart beating fast, I feel the shortness and the shallowness of my breath. My mind is racing with all these thoughts because I have such fear that it's risen to worry, now it's risen to anxiety. And in the extreme cases then, anxiety can rise when it becomes excessive enough to panic, okay? And panic is just this intense anxiety now where a whole lot more physical symptoms have been added. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. If you guys, again, want this little cycle of anxiety sheet that's got a lot of common fears on there and ways to break the cycle, please make sure that you reach out and drop me your email address so that I can get that popped off to you. But anxiety is, because it's rooted in this fear, and when it becomes excessive, it goes up into worry and then anxiety and then panic. One of the things that we have to look at is, what are the fears then? Right? You cannot combat anxiety by living in the past, because anxiety by its very nature is about living in the future. I cannot have anxiety about the past because it's already happened. And I cannot have depression about the future because it hasn't happened yet. I can have depression about the past. I am thinking about these things in the past. They scare me, they worry me, they frighten me because I'm projecting it into the future. I can feel bad about stuff from the past, but then I project it into the future and it becomes anxiety. It becomes fear, then worry, then anxiety. I hope that makes sense. Count your blessing when it happens to you. It helps, Robin. Absolutely. Let's see, Daisy, hard to get your family and friends to understand anxiety and depression. It's sad how many people start to leave your life because to them you're broken when you're trying to get them to understand and seek support. You stop breathing and passed out from bad anxiety. You know, this is why I believe this is the #1 mental health issue that's been diagnosed here in the United States. And again, 40 million people, and I think that's an extremely conservative number, suffer with anxiety issues to the point where we diagnose it as anxiety. And it's exactly that for both of you, is that anxiety itself is a jumbled mess of a lot of our past experiences that we have held on to in a very traumatic way that we then project into the future, that creates this tremendous fear and worry of being out of control, or what if this happens again, or what if we can't manage through it. And then it creates this internal kind of thing where we are really struggling to just manage through sometimes day to day. And so we can do a lot of these techniques to help in the meantime, but how do we really get to the root then of the anxiety itself to kind of diminish, you know, the future anxiety places? And then we can even be worried about having another episode, right? You've heard of this maybe, that I had this anxiety attack. I didn't know it was anxiety. I went to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack. They checked everything out. All my tests came back normal. And they said, well, maybe you're under some stress. Maybe it was anxiety. So now I have this fear of what happens when or if I have another episode like that where I think I'm having a heart attack. Will I be able to differentiate between having a heart attack and maybe it's just an anxiety attack? And I don't say just like it's minimal or no big deal. It's a big deal. But how will I be able to tell the difference? So then I start to have fear and worry about that. And so it becomes this horrible cycle that can be very challenging to break. But what we need to do is just start with the very small steps of first kind of understanding what our fears are, because you cannot combat anxiety at all in any way, shape, or form, whether you have it kind of in a minor way or in a major way that's very inhibitory to your life, unless you understand the fears. So the first place to start is to write down all the negative thoughts and fears that you notice you're having when you start to feel those feelings of anxiety. That is critical, because if you don't, you're never going to be able to move through it. Now, hello, my beautiful friend, Tina Jo. Yes, thank you for popping in, love. So it's important to write down, you know, all of these fears and thoughts. And then the other important question to ask yourself is it true? Okay, so let's take, for example, let's go a little beyond just nervousness. Let's say I am going to apply for a new job. And of course, I'm nervous because I want the new job and I need the new job. But I'm noticing that on my drive over there, it's beyond just nervousness. I'm starting to feel that intensity of that nervousness, and it's turning into anxiety for me. I'm feeling really concerned about, do I look okay? Is my work experience enough? Is my resume okay? Things like that. And as I continue to drive, I'm noticing that my thoughts are increasing as I get closer and closer, because I'm getting closer to the point where I might actually sit and meet with someone in the interview, right? And so I notice that my thoughts are increasing about, my concerns. And I'm noticing that my physical body is reacting more intensely too, right? My breathing is getting more shallow and quicker. I'm feeling much more jittery. I'm noticing that I'm feeling hot, things like that. So now I'm starting to notice all this stuff. I pull into the parking lot, I turn off my car, I take a deep breath, I grab my folder with my resume in it, and I walk into the office, and I'm sitting there and I let the person know I'm here for the interview, and I sit down and I'm a jittery mess. I'm just like this inside. That's exactly the point where it would be helpful, maybe not in that moment right before your interview, but my point is to recall these episodes, these experiences where you felt like that, and write down the thoughts and the fears that you had. I was afraid I wouldn't be liked. I was afraid I wouldn't get the job. I was afraid I didn't look good enough. I was afraid that my clothes weren't good enough. I was afraid I had not written my resume correctly. What if, now I get into the future, what if, and the other questions were the future too, because what you're saying is, what if they don't like me? What if they judge my clothes? What if they don't like my answers? Okay. Or we don't have a lot of sense of self-confidence. And so we have that fear too, that what if I jumble over my words? What if I say the wrong thing? So what happens then is that now we're projecting into the future and we're saying, what happens if they look at my resume and they don't like it? And then we go to that place of, I won't get the job. And then we go to that place that says, then my life will be a mess even more, because now I won't have the money because I don't have this job, and I'll have to look for another job and go through all this again. So then I become more worried and afraid of having to do this all over again and maybe having the same result. So again, it becomes this vicious cycle. So you have to ask if it's true, right? But then you have to ask, what if it's not true? Okay, this is true right now that I'm feeling worried. Is it true, though, that they won't like me? No, I don't know that yet. Now, what if I come out of the interview, and so I've had it now, it's past, it's not a what if projection into the future. I've come out of the interview, and I don't know if I got the job or not, because they said, well, we'll let you know, we'll, be in touch. And I start evaluating how the interview went. Well, if I'm already worried and afraid, I'm going to be looking at that experience through that lens. And so I'm going to say things like, well, she looked away when I gave my answer, or she didn't smile at all during the interview. So see, that means I'm not liked. That means she didn't like my answers. That means I didn't get the job. But we don't know that for sure. Unless that person says, I don't like you, or that was a horrible answer, or I am not going to hire you, all of it is projection from our own thought processes and our own fears and our own worries. We don't know for sure that that's the case. So when you're looking at the thoughts and the fears that you have and you've written them down and you're asking if it's true, you need to ask, is it possible it's not true? And I guarantee you're probably going to come to the realization that more often than not, the fears and the worries that you have that you're projecting into the future are probably not true. And just because you're taking it from the past experiences that says it was true in the past, doesn't mean it will be true now or it will be true in the future. But that's where the anxiety and the worries and the fears come from, is that we're afraid of what if it is true. And so the other thing you can do, which is really important, is breathe. Breathe, 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 breathe. Now, we've heard this a lot from a lot of people. The reason I'm asking you to breathe in a very specific way is simply because you have to interrupt the physical cycle of the biochemical releases that are happening in your body that are creating that increased heart rate, that increased breath, the shallowness of your breath, the jitteriness of your body. You have to interrupt that cycle, or the mind will not interpret that you're calming down. I hope that makes sense. So one of the important things to do is to diaphragmatically breathe, which we talked about like a week ago or so. You take a deep breath in through your nose so that your belly moves outward like you're filling up a balloon, and you do it slowly for about a count of 5. You hold for 5, and then you exhale for 5. And you do that 5 times. It's a minute and maybe 15 seconds tops. So it would look like this. Slow breath exhaling through pursed lips. It's a controlled breath. You pause and you do it again. I don't care if you're in the middle of feeling like you're having a heart attack. I don't care if you're in the middle of your thoughts are going crazy with all kinds of jumbled in and out and flashing of racingness of all these different thoughts. You can still feel from an emotional level all the thoughts that are happening. What I'm inviting you to do is simply to interrupt the physical cycle that's happening in your body that is causing your mind to continue to interpret this as a danger signal. And it will just keep the cycle going. I hope that makes sense. It gets so stuck in your anxiety, you miss the conversation going on. So when you come to awareness, you realize they're sitting and waiting for an answer for a question you've missed because you were deep in your anxiety. Yes. And that is very common, Daisy May. And that is why one of the big things that you can do when you are in the middle of feeling that massive paralyzing, controlling fear and worry is to take a couple of deep breaths that are controlled so you can at least begin to stop the physical onslaught of biochemicals and neurotransmitters that are flooding your body that are creating this difficulty to even be able to just get back into your thoughts. So again, we could spend days, years on anxiety. There is so much to anxiety. This is just a little tiny snippet. And I know that it's a big topic, and to do just a little tiny snippet can be tough. But these are just 3 little ways that you can begin to start to feel like you can even understand it a little bit more. Recognize it's living in the future. Recognize that it's based in your fear, which rises to worry, which rises to anxiety. Learn how to use these 3 little solutions of writing down your thoughts and your fears when you begin to feel the anxiety feelings. Ask yourself if it's really true or not true, and then look for other evidence to maybe prove that wrong. If I say it's true, look for evidence to prove that that's not true. Even if you can't find it in the moment, kind of search that out and take those couple of deep breaths, because that will help. And the important thing with the breath is not just like this, you're just going to hyperventilate. That's not really going to help you. I'm talking about that more slow, controlled, inward breath holding and exhaling that is from the diaphragm, that fills your entire lungs, causes your belly to go out on the inhale, push in on the exhale, can take some practice. That will interrupt the physical cycle, which then allows your mind and your thoughts to begin to kind of bring it down a notch. So I hope that's been helpful. I know today was a fair amount longer than the typical 15-ish, 20-ish minutes that we've been doing on the lives, but it's a huge topic. I hope that it's helpful. Please reach out to me, whether it is or isn't, and offer up some feedback. And if you feel that this will benefit someone you know or love, since there are so many people that suffer with anxiety issues, even as just a beginning to it, please feel free to share the video, share the love. If you're interested in the little PDF sheet, make sure that you pop me off your email. That has some good strategies on there for kind of working through as well. I love you all. I appreciate you all. I'm so grateful to be here. And tomorrow I'll be back at 2 o'clock where we're dealing with depression, another big one. It might go a little long like today did as well, just because it's a huge topic and it really does affect so many people. For now, I hope that you have a calmer, anxiety-free day that's less stressful, that's less feeling out of control for you. Know that I love you, I'm here for you, and I'll help however I can. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. Ciao for now.